document called the Presidential Security Directive 11, or PSD-11. This was the Barack Obama administration's plan to use the entirety of the United States government and its capabilities to support the overthrow of friendly allied governments across the Middle East and North Africa, and to replace them with Muslim Brotherhood regimes. Now, this document was published, I shouldn't say published, this document was written, was promulgated in August 2010. It remains classified, so I cannot say that I've ever seen it, and only those with the highest clearances have seen it. But its gist has leaked out over the years, and the general gist of PSD-11 is understood to be the empowerment of the Muslim Brotherhood, especially across North Africa, but also domestically, right here at home in the United States, and the Persian Gulf area, the Middle East heartland, if you will, was to be for the domination by Iran and the Shiites. So there you see a little bit of a trade-off. The Shiites would have the Middle East heartland, the Sunnis would get North Africa. But in any case, the idea was to change governments. The Obama administration, the Clinton Secretary of State Department, were dedicated to changing governments in these areas to give them over to Muslim Brotherhood and jihadist domination. Now, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton at the time planned to use the anticipated transformation of North Africa and the entire region to bolster President Barack Obama's 2012 re-election campaign for president, and also as a platform for her own plans to run for president in 2016. So, when the United States, behind the scenes backing, funding, training, and clandestine weapons flow from Qatar for the Libyan Muslim Brotherhood and its subordinate al-Qaeda militias during the 2011 uprising against Gaddafi, entirely predictably turned Libya into a chaotic, failed state in 2012, the year after, with heavily armed jihadis running amok across the entire country. A cover-up, as you heard both Roger Aronoff and Stephanie Jason talk about, a cover-up was the Obama-Clinton default position. Despite repeated attacks against Western interests, including our own, in Benghazi throughout 2012, repeated pleas, as Stephanie said, dozens and dozens, 100 for Benghazi alone, for more security, for our mission there, they were all refused. It wouldn't do, you see, to let Americans or the world see what a mess Libya was because of the Obama-Clinton PSD-11 policy. Then, things have gone from bad to worse in what used to be called Libya. The country is torn by competing militias, including the Islamic State now, with a presence there. And that has established a very dangerous base of operations in Libya. And yet to date, the Trump administration has not made the decision to support General Khalifa Haftar, who is fighting against the same jihadis that the Obama team tried so hard to empower there in Libya. Nor has President Trump yet agreed to declassify and to release the contents of PSD-11.
A very important topic, and it's on PSD-11. So I have a clicker here. I hope I can get this to work right. PSD-11, Presidential Study Directive 11, was signed by President Obama in August 2010. And I'd like you to pay particular close attention to the dates that I'm going to show you so that you can connect the dots and discover the truth. This presidential directive, which I believe is a treasonous action, empowered the Muslim Brotherhood to organize and lead an Arab Spring that resulted in the chaos that ensued, leading directly to the attack in Benghazi just 2 years later.
Good afternoon, everybody. There are very few moments in our lives where we have the privilege to witness history taking place. This is one of those moments. This is one of those times. The people of Egypt have spoken, their voices have been heard, and Egypt will never be the same. By stepping down, President Mubarak responded to the Egyptian people's hunger for change. But this is not the end of Egypt's transition. It's a beginning.
PSD-11 remains classified to this day, and I encourage all of you to leave here and write to your members of Congress, call them. It must be declassified. President Trump needs to declassify this document. In 2016, Congressman Peter Hoekstra testified before the Homeland Security Committee in a hearing entitled Identifying the Enemy, Radical Islamic Terror. The words that you see there are not my words. These are his words from the testimony before Congress. For the first time since its founding in 1928, the Muslim Brotherhood ran a major country in the Middle East, and Obama and Clinton were willing accomplices. As I stated, in August 2010, Obama signed PSD-11, which gave a government-wide reassessment of prospects for political reform in the Middle East and the Muslim Brotherhood's role in that process. Under PSD-11, Obama and Hillary pivoted from the historical U.S. strategy of maintaining order and stability in the Middle East and instead turned to a strategy emphasizing regime change regardless of the impacts on stability. U.S. officials did not concern themselves with questions over whether new power structures would become allies or foes. They disregarded intelligence warnings. They undermined a longtime ally, President Mubarak, and they planned to do that 6 months before Obama gave that public address. This was not some conflagration of individuals in the Middle East seeking freedom, but rather organized for destruction. Here's a timeline. I call this a timeline of terror. This was initiated by the Obama administration. Here we have in 2010, Obama signs the directive. In January, the Muslim Brotherhood leads the revolution, the so-called Arab Spring in Egypt. February, Obama gives the speech you just saw. A little bit after that, about a week later, Muslim Brotherhood starts the revolution in Libya. And events unfold from there, leading directly to the attack in Benghazi.
Go back to the 2008 campaign. In the primaries, Barack Obama said that he would sit down with dictators without precondition, and Hillary Clinton mocked him for being naive and foolish. She didn't know the half of it. But he wasn't just talking in the abstract there about some general principle of international relations. He was talking in particular about Iran and about trying to reorder our alliance structure in the Middle East. He admitted as much last year in a notorious interview he conducted with the Atlantic magazine. And therefore, he always ended up siding with Iran's interests in the Middle East, all to get to a deal, then to preserve a deal. So for instance, when students protested in Iran after the Ayatollah-style election in the summer of 2009, the Obama administration largely stood by. For days, they said nothing. They finally issued a meekly worded statement, not even a strongly worded statement. By contrast, in the Arab Spring in 2011, barely 18 months later, a partner of ours, Egypt, under Hosni Mubarak, faced protests of its own, and the Obama administration immediately threw Mubarak under the bus. A couple months later, they launched airstrikes against Gaddafi. No American friend, but someone who, after 2003, had given up his weapons of mass destruction program because he was scared of the United States power. Therefore, the Obama administration was also looking for ways, or looking for partners who would be more friendly towards Iran.
And what was launched under the name of the Arab Spring, the Arab Spring had a deeper agenda, and that's now beginning to emerge. The U.S. intelligence services and the U.S. State Department secretly began backing a much more ambitious project using a secret Masonic-like organization called the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood originated in the 1920s, as some of you may know, in Egypt under a fanatical jihadist named Banna. They built a secret underground organization in Egypt to fight against the British, and during the Second World War, the Nazis came into Egypt and recruited the Brotherhood and supported them in the fight against the British, and they found the Nazi ideology quite amenable to their own, apparently. After the war, the Muslim Brotherhood was taken over as a franchise by British intelligence until the British financially were unable to sustain their presence in the Middle East and turned the franchise over to the CIA, the Americans. So Washington started playing with a very, very dangerous cocktail of religious fanaticism and prepared over a period of years before the events in Tunisia and before the events in Tahrir Square in Cairo. They began training cadre in Washington. They brought organizers from Canvas in Belgrade, the ones who organized the color revolution against Milosevic in 2000. And they began training cadre to create what was the superficial part of the regime change, Washington regime change, namely the youth Twitter revolution or Facebook revolution, the protests in Tahrir Square. Now, these are not purely spontaneous events. They are orchestrated by trained cadre. Canvas is financed by the US government through various NGOs and other things.